Welcome back. This is Citizen Business Center. And let's take a look at some of the effects of El Nino. And the last time that Kenya experienced the bitter wrath of El Nino rains was in October 1997 to January 1998. Now, the rainfall recorded at the time was 60 to 100 times heavier than normal. Globally, the 1997-1998 El Nino claimed over 20,000 lives. Pastoralists reported losing up to 70% of their livestock. There was also a major outbreak of the Rift Valley fever in northeastern Kenya, where about 89,000 people were infected and 500 deaths caused by that hemorrhagic fever, which is transmitted by mosquitoes. The 1998-1997 El Nino rains also triggered an outbreak of cholera and malaria in various parts of the country. It is estimated that about 100,000 kilometers of rural and urban roads were destroyed, paralyzing transport and communications across the country. A case in point was the 30-kilometer stretch of the Nairobi-Mombasa highway that was closed indefinitely after it was damaged by the flash floods. The cost of infrastructure damage was estimated to be about $670 million US, which is equivalent to 69 million shillings at a current exchange rate. 300,000 households across the country were displaced due to flooding. Most of the affected people were in Tana River, Nyakach, Nyando, Budalangi, Garissa and Mandera. As a result, about 2 million Kenyans were in need of emergency food aid by December 1997. And so the big question tonight is, that is emerging tonight, is Kenya better prepared this time round for El Nino? Over to you, Terian.
Thank you very much, Michael. Now, as we've just shown you, the El Nino phenomenon can be quite catastrophic, quite some staggering numbers there given to us by Michael Njenga. And tonight on the Citizen Business Center, we'll assess what the likely impact of El Nino will be on Kenya's economy and how to manage the risks, as well as the opportunities, which is, of course, the flip side that this unique weather phenomenon portends. To discuss this topic, I'm joined by Anzet Sewere, a development economist, Dr. Isaac Kalua, chairperson of the Kenya Water Towers Agency, and Isaac Nyaru, an insurance and risk management specialist. Thank you all so much for joining us on the Business Center tonight. And Zetse, let's just kick off with you. Those numbers given to us by Michael, quite staggering indeed, 20,000 deaths.
Yes.
You know, so many Kenyans, 300,000 Kenyans displaced, millions, about 1 million or so also badly in need of food aid at the end of the 97-98 El Nino rains. However, generally this time round, the general consensus is that El Nino might not be as heavy as it was in 97 and 98. What is your feeling about the general economic impact this would have for Kenya this time round?
It's going to be quite serious, because if you look at 97 and 98, it actually cost us, in crop and infrastructure alone, it cost us $1.2 billion. So one of the problems that we're having right now is there are two big problems. The first problem is that some of the money that we're having to put together for the El Nino Disaster Fund is money that may have been doing funding and development financing that would have created economic opportunities, that would have been economically productive. Now that money has had to be redirected from that productive activity into this disaster management fund. So there is going to be a muting of economic possibilities. But the big one really is infrastructure, because the problem is not just that roads collapse and bridges collapse and then you have to repair them. The real cost comes when people can't get to and from work, can't get to and from their places of business. So a lot of the economically productive activities that should be going on normally come to a standstill. And it's not just the flood areas that are affected, it has knock-on effects on the commercial areas that surround the flood areas as well. So what you find is that when that infrastructure gets locked down and isn't able to function, those knock-on effects become quite real.
Dr. Kalua, where you sit as the chairman of the Kenya Water Towers Agency, do you feel that as a country we're ready for this? Are we really ready for this?
Unfortunately, I believe that we are not, for reasons that are very valid. One is that we need to understand that every crisis comes with an opportunity. The secret lies in identifying the actual opportunity. It is sad that even as we sit and are trying to identify the opportunities, the level of preparedness seems to be in having committees and identifying funds, but the actual person on the ground, there are people who actually don't understand what El Nino is. There are some who are looking at it as a monster that is just about to arrive, but instead of all this, why I believe that we are not yet ready is because we have not done what we are doing right now. We should be seeing El Nino as a tremendous opportunity. So that, because Kenyans, I have said this time and again, Kenyans, tell them to conserve the environment, which is the source of the kind of calamity that is happening today. You'll be left alone, but show them how to make money. They will go in that direction in a manner that you will not believe. So as we try to explain to them, let us show them the opportunities. As opposed to disaster.
And now that you're here, Kalu, I'm sure we'll talk about those opportunities in just a moment. Mr. Ngaru, the El Nino will inevitably bring risks. You know, we saw what happened recently with the floods, which was nothing close to, you know, what we are told to expect this time around. A few months ago in Nairobi, for instance, you know, those floods all over the place. People's cars were stuck in those floods on the roads. And the question, and we're getting a lot of this on our SMS platform, is, you know, are there insurance covers that they can take now, just, you know, before the El Nino happens? Is it too late?
Well, thank you, Terian, for that question. I think the basic covers that cover property generally will have extensions covering the effects of El Nino. That particular risk, they are already there. And most of the people who are insured, unfortunately, there are very few people who are insured in Kenya. The penetration ratio of insurance in Kenya is just about 3%. And when you take into account the GNP per capita for insurance, is called insurance density, it is much lower. So it means a lot of people who will be affected by the El Nino effect will not be insured at all. That's the only unfortunate thing about it. Now, as to whether it is too late to insure, I think the main thing will here be to look at the policies already that are in force and make sure that the clauses that cover El Nino flooding and all those other risks associated therewith are there in the policies. Now, for those who are not insured at all, I think this will be a question of talking to the brokers and insurance companies. Now, from the kind of stance that have been taken by insurance companies lately, they've become very innovative, socially oriented. I suppose that there are still some insurance companies, many of them, who will be willing to look at new proposals, particularly this time. But I was talking about the preparedness. People have known about this kind of phenomena. We've had floodings, we've had excessive inundation over the years. But there are very few people who know that they should actually insure as a risk financing kind of mechanism, taking it up, which is the end part of risk management process. Very few people actually take up, even those ones who are capable of taking it up. So there are some insurance companies certainly who will be willing to take it. And I'm saying that on the basis of the fact, like during the last elections, considering what happened in the 2007 elections, many businesses were affected by the post-election violence. And come 2013 election, a lot of businesses took up political risks insurance, which covered this kind of thing, and insurance companies were willing, and they did write quite a lot of business. Of course, the virus never happened. So judging from that kind of stance that insurance companies seem to have, I imagine that there are many insurance companies who will be willing to look at particularly these risks, and particularly enhancing the covers for those who have already got insurance, but they don't have the cover. For
interestingly, actually, about insurance, Terian, I have realized that we just need to be very smart. And some of the counties, actually, I was looking at the figures about insurance, and I realized that the uptake of insurance, for instance, and surprisingly so, there are some counties and regions that are smarter than others. Because after Nairobi, in terms of the uptake of insurance, the second county, you expect it to be one of the big counties or big cities, but the second one is Baringo County. It's very interesting, and figures don't lie. And therefore, I think at the county level, at individual level, we just need to be very careful and very smart. And again, it's an opportunity. It's a business opportunity for those who are dealing with that. Because then when you lose, you lose. You don't expect to be supported when it doesn't make sense or when there is so much pressure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that comment. And let's say fishermen, for instance, have already been asked to, stay off the sea, and that means, lack of income for their own households, lack of fish, for the markets. It can push up the prices of fish for one, and it could also, bring down the living standards of the home, because then there's no income coming in. What are some of the sectors that you see getting most affected?
Agriculture is going to be a big one. And you have to bear in mind, when we're talking about agriculture, we're talking about crops and livestock. And so both will be negatively affected. And as these gentlemen have said, the insurance problem that we have in Kenya is dire. So there will be losses that will not necessarily be recovered. The other side of the agriculture thing is that this may be followed by a period of drought. So there is going to be some environmental instability going on there that will inform and negatively affect the ability of farmers to make a steady income. And so there is broader questions that are going to emerge around food security in Kenya. And food security is a very important economic reality, because people who are food insecure cannot be economically productive. So if we're going into El Nino and we're going to get all this livestock and crops devastated, followed by a period of unpredictable weather, there is going to be impacts in terms of pricing of food, and there is going to be impact in terms of food security for many Kenyans.
Isaac, let's just bring you in, and I know I'm bringing you in because I know that you're an environmentalist and you're passionate about farming as well. We've got Charles Koech here from Kericho, who says, he's a tea farmer. What can he expect? And perhaps with that you can just, say one or two things that you would speak to farmers about, what they can expect around this time and what they could have done or what they can do now that it is already going to happen.
I suggest we pick it up from point of information to the common mwananchi. What is El Nino? Because this is where we need to start from.
Exactly.
And therefore the rest become details. And I'll demonstrate just by showing this glass of water. If you pour this glass of water on a carpet or a cloth or some sponge, it will disappear in and slowly wheeze out or move out from that position. What it happens within the water towers, which are the forests and all that, if there is grass, if there is vegetation, if there are trees in those particular areas, those water towers, those forests of ours, that wet area of yours becomes a storage, an underground storage for water. Now, with the rains that are expected, these are expected to be much, much more than the normal rains. We are talking of rains that starting from October and going all the way to January in some parts of the country, and others going up to December of this year. And therefore you have much, much more water. After demonstrating that, you need now to think of the next thing. What are the advantages? It means more water. Water is life. When there is water, there is much more in investments in agriculture. There is much more that you can do in various other areas that are very practical. It means there is more employment, because you need to open up the dredges. You need to do quite a lot. Roads need to be done, and therefore business opportunities for the contractors. When it comes to energy, our dams are going to be filled up, and therefore we need strategically to plan so that the energy that we are going to use, the source of electricity, comes from those hydro systems that we already have, and we keep away the use of diesel, and therefore we can strategically work to reduce the cost of electricity in our country. We are talking of opportunities in the health sector. We are talking of so many opportunities that we must strategically think about this. And those people who have been given the responsibility to take care of this need to be extremely responsible, because these are opportunities. Most of the times during such disasters, you find people are making good committees, very big money. Oh, we have set this kind of money for disaster management, and you look at the teams at the grassroots that are supposed to be managing, because the systems, after meteorological department has done all this information is already cascaded to the grassroots. And every county has got a county officer. Every county has got a disaster management committee. And as money is up there and meetings being held at the desktop level, those committees that already have documents for action do not even have money for fuel or even lunch. They don't even have gumboots to be able to operate at this level. They don't even have the opportunity to communicate through churches. You see, these are the things that we just have to be responsible.
Okay. Tell me though, and you mentioned coming down to the Monanchi level, and I want to imagine, say, my grandmother in Kapkatet, or my mother somewhere in the village as well. What can they do? How can they harvest rain? Where do they start?
Look at it this way. Talk about my region, the region of Lower Eastern. We normally have rains. This is the opportunity for you to look at hybrid plants and crops to be able to plant, because you have prolonged system. And there is in every county an agricultural officer working with the Met systems that you are able to be advised specifically, and the impacts up to the village level. This is how efficient the government is, and the government has invested quite a lot in its system. So a farmer is able to understand that this is the time you have more water, and therefore regions of Lower Eastern are able to plant more crops, better crops. You can even do 2 seasons because the rains are as much as possible. You talked about tea. There is the negative effect of much water in this region, in the harvesting and what comes with it, the wind damage and all that. You need to be able, it's not just a general kind of a situation. And this is why today heads of parastatals and the Nyumba Kumi initiative, the part of environment is very, very taken very seriously, so that there is action up to the point of the community where you're supposed to be working. So there is action that can be taken. It means more crops, it needs more water. And please allow me to talk about rainwater harvesting.
Okay, very quickly, because we need to take their final comments and then we wrap.
Rainwater harvesting. You need to understand, in a dry region, you need 20 liters of water. A cow would need about 50 liters of water. A goat maybe 10 liters of water. This is scientifically proven. And therefore you need to calculate times the 8 people or 10 people that are in your homestead. How much tank do you have? So that you move from 10,000 liter tank and build a 20 or buy a 20,000 or 50,000. Go even to an underground dam and dig and have some plastic and store water so that it is able. This is an opportunity for the counties to ensure that the dams are ready for this. This is an opportunity for sand dams that you can be able to do so that you can build your people.
Okay.
So there is much more.
All right, we really have to wind up.
I think we need to look at the short term versus long term, because short term there will be devastation, people will be dislocated, they won't be able to be economically productive, infrastructure will be destroyed. There is going to be a negative impact in the short term that can be mitigated to a certain extent. But I think in the long term, as he's saying, there are opportunities to be had. But I think also in terms of just the government manpower, particularly in terms of health and the waterborne diseases that are going to arise, that will affect people again being able to conduct business and be productive. So I think we need to have that conversation around what are the short-term effects and what are the negative impacts that we will have to deal with, but how can we leverage opportunity as we go into the long-term process.
Mr. Ngaro, what sort of conversations, and this has mentioned, beginning conversations about, some of these issues that we as Kenyans must begin to face where disaster preparedness is concerned. When it comes to risk, as we wrap up, what type of conversations should Kenyans begin to have?
I think the message that comes very strongly here is that we try to manage risk here and on a national basis, ex post facto, after the event. Most of the time, we don't prepare for it in advance. And as I said earlier, risk management has got a series of steps, and disaster management contains all those steps. But the last step, which is financing, is where we need really to look into it. And in all disaster management kind of initiatives that we have had, we haven't had a component for financing. Right now, we are told we don't have enough funds to manage this disaster, the El Nino disaster. But if we had planned for it in advance, a lot of financing could have been arranged. And this is where insurance really comes in. We have insurance for infrastructure. In cost of construction, for instance, we've got a policy we call contractors or risks, which comes in very handy where we have floods and things like that destroy infrastructure in cost of construction. But there can also be insurance to cover infrastructure on a long-term basis. We don't have that cover here in Kenya, but we have it worldwide, and there are insurance companies operating in this market that are prepared to back up insurance companies that come up with that kind of product. Then at the individual level, and also that's the whole household level, business level, the businesses have got to take up covers and arrange for disasters in advance, and insurance comes in handy to finance the risk on a long-term basis before the event has actually happened.
All right, we really have to wind up. My director will shut us out. Thank you very much. We've been hosting Isaac Ngaru, an insurance and risk management specialist, and Zetsewere, a development economist, and Dr. Isaac Kalua, chairperson of the Kenya Water Towers Agency. Thank you so much for your comments. We've got a very cheeky Don here who says, I've saved up for El Nino, I've heard about it, but I just don't know where this event is taking place and where to buy the tickets. So I guess he does make sense, because maybe the issue of we have not really told Kenyans exactly what El Nino is. So do keep it Citizen TV. We are bringing you day-to-day reports on El Nino, what to expect, and how you can protect yourself and your family and your business. We'll be back in just a moment.